Alright guys, welcome to your next video. In this video we're going to talk about specifically what's called inner quartile range. So in our previous video we talked about creating our box plot. So now we're going to interpret that data more specifically for our inner quartile range. So remember, this is actually a quartile right here. That's 25% of your data. Okay? Now when we see this, this is 25% of your data. This is the next 25% of your data. This is your next 25% and your other 25%. So right here it looks like there's 5 equal sections, but there's actually 4 because we have our median graph right here. So important to know median is 50% because it's half of your data, and that makes sense because these two sections, 25% plus 25% is 50%. Then this 25% plus this 25% is another 50%. So between their minimum and quartile 3, that's 1, 2, 3 sections, which each section is 25%. So this is 75% of your data. Okay? Kind of some things to think about, and we'll have some questions like that later on. But if we're talking about inner quartile range, we're going to be talking specifically about quartile 3 and quartile 1. So all inner quartile range is when you take your quartile 3 and we subtract quartile 1, and we get what we call IQR, or inner quartile range. So let me show you guys how to interpret this data based on what we actually have graphed. Okay? So it says, Dylan surveyed 100 students to find out how long it takes him to walk to school. He displayed this data with this box plot. So here's something to know. We do not know how long it took each of these 100 students. We do not have the list of numbers of all 100 students. But what we have is what he did his 5-number summary on to create this. So in this case, we didn't have to stop and put our numbers in order from least to greatest and create the box plot. It was already done for us. But now we're going to interpret the data given to us to find this important information. So again, the first thing we want you guys to do when you see a box plot is create the 5-number summary. That means what was there from that information that you had. Okay? So the minimum is your lowest number, which was 2. Your maximum is going to be your highest number, and it looks a little bit above 26. Let's say it was about, let's try to be a little bit more in the middle. Let's say the maximum was 27. Okay, so it's in the middle of that 26 and 28. Then the median, you can always know, I'm going to do a different color right here, I'm going to do the median right here, is 14. So that median is always represented in the box plot by the line that's in that box. Okay? Then quartile 1 is going to be right here. That first part of where that box starts. So that's 10. Okay? Then your upper quartile is going to be where that box ends. We'll say that's 21. Okay? So your range is what we're going to do when we're going to take our maximum and we are going to subtract our minimum. Just trying to keep these colors consistent, help you to see it. Now range can also be called spread. How spread out your data is. Okay? So that means with Dylan surveying these students, the person that it took the longest to walk was 27 minutes, and the person that took the least amount of time to walk was 2 minutes. So that person, or those people, live right next door. We don't know how many people took 2 minutes. That could be 2 people, 5 people. We don't know how many people took 27 minutes. That could be just 1 person. That could be 8 people. We don't know because we don't have the list of all 100 students' numbers that took us to walk, but we just know the data itself, how spread out this is. So the maximum was 27, and your minimum was 2 minutes. So you just say 27 minus 2. So your spread, or your range, is 25 minutes. So that's the difference between those two. So we just simply take your maximum and your minimum. Now your IQR, inner quartile range, well, range means we're going to subtract your highest and low, but IQR, inner quartile, means between the quartiles. Okay? We've already compared our maximum and minimum, so inner quartile actually focuses between your upper quartile and your lower quartile. Now, I forgot to say this. Upper quartile means your higher numbers. Okay? So this is your higher numbers of your data. Your lower quartile are the lower numbers of your data. Okay? So here again, we had our min, we had our max. Always get in the habit of labeling that minimum, maximum. Then I would always label my median next. Because if you don't know your median, you can't find quartile 1. Okay? Remember, quartile 1, or your lower quartile, that's the middle number of those lower numbers once we had it listed. So quartile 1, and then we have quartile 3. Okay? So with IQR, what we're going to do is we are going to take quartile 3, and we are going to subtract quartile 1. So if we didn't know how to read this box plot, we wouldn't know how to answer these questions. Okay? So quartile 3 was 21, and quartile 1 was 10. So 21 minus 10 gives you 11. So all that means is even though we don't have the list of all the 100 students surveyed of their times of how it took to walk, but between these quartiles there's actually a spread of data right here of 11 numbers. Okay, or from 11, not 11 numbers, excuse me, but between those two, our IQR is 11. Okay, because the highest for this one was 21 minutes, the lowest for quartile 1 was 10. So we just subtract them. Okay, so this was just kind of saying where this data is headed. Let's do one more together and then get you guys some independent practice. Okay, so basically what we need to do is understand that 5-number summary for this part to find our range or our spread, and then our IQR. So we'll say range or spread. Okay, so remember, the range is the maximum minus the minimum. Okay, so we have to know that. Well, here we go. Right here we see the minimum is the lowest point is 10. So I'm going to go ahead and use that part. Then we said the maximum is always over here, the highest point. So that's my max. And that would be 40. So we know we're going to subtract those two. Go ahead and label that up here. So 40 minus 10 is 30. So my data for Ray, even though 50 students were surveyed in the library and they asked how many books they read in the past year, the data of that was spread out between 30. Okay? So we don't know how many of the students said how many books they read. We know that there would be 50 individual numbers. So one student might have read 10 books. One student might have read 40. There might have been actually 8 people that read 40 and maybe only one person that read 10. But we know that that's how spread out the data is, between 30 numbers, between 30 books in that case. Okay? Then we know that our median is always right here. It's always the line. So this is where we need you guys to kind of think about it. A lot of y'all think median is in the middle. And even though this does not look like it's in the middle of this box plot, this is actually the middle number once they ordered these 50 numbers from least to greatest. So the median was actually 18. So that means 25 of your numbers were between 10 and 18, and the other 25 numbers, because there's 50 total students, was between 18 and 40. Okay? So we'll talk more about that as well, what that data means in future lessons, but right now we're just talking about what is called the IQR. Okay? So then let's go ahead and say the lower quartile right here. That means 25% of your data, that's your first quartile, would be 14. And then your upper quartile is going to be that end of the box, quartile 3. So that end of the box to your maximum, and that's going to be, this is 32, so we'll say 33. Okay. Here again, we're going to do our upper quartile or quartile 3, and all that means, your upper quartile that covers 75% of your data, and then we're going to subtract your lower quartile and see the difference between those. Quartile 3 minus quartile 1. So quartile 1 we said was 14. Quartile 3 we said was 33. And then we're going to subtract those. Okay. So 33 minus 14. 3 minus 4 I can't do, so I borrow. That's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yep. So that's 19. So that means that my interquartile range is 19 books. There's 19 different book numbers from there. Okay? All right, so this is what we're going to be having you practice with today. Again, you have to understand these different parts of your box plot to be able to understand how to find these two numbers, your spread of data and your IQR. As always, please reach out to your teacher if you need help. Good luck.